7 ways that narcissists just subtly devalue you in conversation. This is not like a full-out devalue. Yes, they tend to do that too, a lot of times. But this is an actual, just a subtle devalue where, you know, it's just like, that didn't seem good. Or maybe I'm imagining it. It's almost like a gaslighting kind of thing to try to sort of make you think you're crazy, but they're just kind of subtly devaluing you at the same time. So the first way that they subtly devalue you is maybe have like an instant attack of pain somewhere, or they just generally seem sort of bothered, or kind of, they just don't have patience, you know, like you're starting to tell them something, you're really into it, it really means a lot to you, or you really want their input from something, and it's just, oh God, all of a sudden, I just have a rat. Oh, I thought there was a bug on me or something. Oh gosh. Anyway, you were saying, and it's like you were like right in the middle of something really, really important, and they almost can like subtly sense like, oh, here I am, I'm about to say something that really means a lot to me, and they just kind of like subtly sort of like, I'm bothered, I have an attack, something's going on with me, you know, I suddenly have an itch or a headache, or I thought something was happening, and it's just like enough to kind of throw you off, and you're like, are you listening to me? But then, of course, if they have this sudden attack or whatever, and you say, oh, you're not listening. Oh, no, I just had an itch, or I just thought a bug was on me, or I just had a headache, or something happened. And so you're like, but you kind of notice that it sort of happens like every single time you're trying to tell them something, that they just had, like suddenly have this sudden attack, or they just seem bothered or distracted, like they just, you know, aren't fully present. So that's number one. So number two is that they hear something. They hear something outside. Oh my God, I thought that was this. Or I thought somebody was at the door. Oh, hold on a second. I thought I heard like an ambulance outside, or a big bang or something. And yes, that happens to people from time to time, but this is like kind of like it happens every time. Like every time you're talking, there's like something that distracts them from you and allowing you to make your point. The next one is that they remember something. They remember something that they need to look at. They remember something they need to do. Oh my God, excuse me, I need to go and look at the stove, or something is going on. And oh, I need to text this person something I just remembered. And you know, it's just all like a way to sort of like trip you up off your game, so that you know, don't really get to make your point, because they don't really want you to have to make your point, or to get to make your point. They can want to subtly let you know that what you're saying doesn't really quite matter to them. And you know, kind of closely related is they need to look at their phone real quick. They need to see, you know, something that's going on. Oh, I just heard this beep. I need to go check it. Oh my goodness, I'm really waiting for this particular call. This is really important. I need to go grab this. So sorry, let me go check this. I'll be back. Something like that. And so there you are, you know, especially if you're making a point that's something that really means a lot to you, that's it, you know, even more for them to want to, you know, kind of be distracted by that. And another video you can definitely check out is signs of narcissistic texting, and you can check out that video to see if the text messages that you're receiving are kind of indications of somebody being a narcissist. The next one is that they kind of forget something that you know that they should remember, like, oh, well, hey, what was the name of your, you know, your friend again? I can never remember her friend, the name. Or what was when's your birthday again? You know, like they just forget a detail of something that they know is really, really important to you. And it just subtly devalues you right in that moment. And if you think that this is so wrong and that the words that you are saying to this person matter because you matter, I want you to write, "I matter" in the comments right now. The next one that they do, and this is very typical of a narcissist, very typical, is they take issue with your tone or your verbiage, so that now the conversation is shifting. So if you're trying to say, even if you just say something like, "It really hurts my feelings when you don't listen to me," you know, something like that, right? "Oh my God, I can't believe that you said it that way. You're accusing me. You are yelling at me. I didn't like the way you said that. Why do you have to speak so loudly that all the neighbors can hear you?" And you're like, "I just said, it hurts my feelings when, like, I wasn't even yelling. You were definitely yelling. We should have had it taped, blah, blah, blah." And so now you're talking about how you said it, and you're finding yourself like, "I'm sorry, I didn't say it that way. I didn't mean it that way." You're like defending yourself. You're trying to apologize, and you're just trying to get back to what it is that you were trying to say. But since they don't ever want you to get back there, now you're talking about, you know, how you said it, or the words that you chose, or something like that. So now the conversation has shifted to that, and that way you don't ever have to get to the point of whatever it was that you were upset about. Another one that they do all the time is they say, "Now's not a good time. You know, I'm busy, I'm with my friends, I'm tired." You always want to talk at a time that it's like so inconvenient. Why do you have to choose now? And then you'll say, "Well, when is a good time?" Well, of course, never is the answer. It's never a good time. But that's not the point. The point is you chose the wrong time right now. And if you want to know more about a narcissist's favorite sayings, make sure you check out my video called Narcissist Favorite Sayings, and we'll make sure to drop a link to that below. The next one is not making eye contact. So you're trying to talk to them. It's another way of really just being distracted. You know, I can't pay attention to what you're saying because I'm like over here, I'm looking at stuff, I'm looking at things in the room. "Oh my God, I never noticed that piece of lint over there. I'm sorry, what were you saying?" You know, so not making eye contact is another one. And the next one is playing the victim by shifting the conversation back to them. You know, like, "Oh, you know, I understand that you're depressed. You know, I'm also depressed. And, you know, the last few weeks have been really, really hard for me. And, you know, I'm still dealing with these issues with my mother or my sister or my business partner or whatever." And suddenly you're now talking about how awful their lives are and how they are a victim. The last one is one-upping you. You know, "My trauma is worse than your trauma." So if you're trying to say, like, "I don't really appreciate when you expose me, or you put me down in front of other people. Can we not do that? Can we have a conversation that's private, maybe afterwards, if you're upset with something that I've done? Oh my gosh, you don't even know. You think that this is bad. You think this is traumatic. You have no idea. You know, my father used to do this, that, and the other thing to me, and da 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 da." It's sort of like, you know, shifting the conversation again, but it's also one-upping you. It's also saying, like, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I've had it worse. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, it really doesn't matter. And it's, again, a way to devalue you. Ways narcissists subtly devalue you in conversation. I've totally seen this, by the way. They have like this instant attack of like, you're in the middle of a conversation and you think that they're finally listening to it. And all of a sudden they have like this instant attack of like pain or something. Oh, excuse me. Oh, hold on. I have like this headache or something. I'm sorry. I was listening to you. They just have like this instant like attack of something happening, or they just like are bothered or something happened. Have you seen that before? Yeah, that's number one. Number two is they just hear something outside for a second or hear something else and then they have to get back to you. So number two is, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. What was that? You were saying something. What was that again? All right. So that was number two. You were trying to talk to them. You were saying something that was actually really important. And then in the middle of that, they like needed to do something, right? They thought they heard something. So then the number three is you're in the middle of something very, very important. You really want them to hear this thing. And in the middle of that, they remember, hold on a second. I just need to look at something. Hold on one second. Oh, I just need to look at this thing over here. Hold on. There's that. That's number three. Number four is they just are super impatient. Number four is like, can you just hurry up and get to the point? Hurry up. I don't have a lot of time for this. Like, come on, hurry up. That's number four. Number five is like, oh my God, I love this song. Let's listen to it. Or, oh my God, look at this thing on TV. Let's watch this thing on TV. Oh my God, like, I love this. This is so cool. Let's watch this thing. Oh my gosh, like they get distracted by something else that's like, the attention needs to be focused on that right away instead of whatever it is that you're saying. So they hear a song or something comes on the TV or something else other than what it is that you're saying. So that is more important than whatever it is that you wanted to say. And then that becomes the thing. So that is a way to subtly devalue you in the conversation as well, which is just so silly because it just tells more about them than it does about you. Just so you know, that is so much more about them than it is about you. It's not about you. That's about them. So I want you to put that in the comments. It's about them. It's not about you. That's their thing. The next way that they subtly devalue you in a conversation is that while you're trying to finally make your point, they will start to take issue with your tone, your verbiage, or the way you're saying something. Why are you saying it like that? How come you're bringing that up like that? And then suddenly the conversation goes in that direction. Now you're talking about you and how you brought it up and that. And now you don't ever get to the point of what it is that you wanted to say because it's about you and how you brought it up and all of that. And that's a form of gaslighting, by the way. The next one is number 7, and that is, now is not a good time. I'm with my friends. I'm busy. I'm tired. Why are you bringing that up now? This isn't a convenient thing to talk about at this moment. They'll say that this is important to me, but this isn't a good time. And then, what you find out is it's never a good time to have the conversation because you realize that over time, there's always like these little attacks of needing to look at the phone, talk to them, the whole thing. Go back through 1 through 7, right? Because you're always being sort of subtly devalued. Why are you bringing that up now? How come I don't like your tone? The whole thing all the time. So that's 1 through 7. Number 8 is just not making eye contact. Like, one of the things I like about this one is a lot of times Like they're asking you, how are you? What are you up to? Whatever. And then they're like not even looking at you as you're answering, they're looking down. And what's interesting to me about some of these is that you can be sometimes like on a Zoom call or something. And they think that they're being cute, like, maybe they're you're not going to notice that they're kind of like looking around or trying to text or doing something else while they're on the Zoom call with you or whatever. But you can tell when somebody is doing something else while they're online with you and not making eye contact. If you agree with me, put like for sure in the comments, right? It's so true, right? Another one is playing the victim. Oh my gosh. When you're trying to have a conversation with them, you're just asking them a question. All of a sudden, why are you attacking me? I didn't do anything wrong. And you didn't even say anything. But, I didn't do anything wrong. Why? What is this about? Shifting the conversation back to them. Now it's like this devaluing of you again. The last one is one upping you. My trauma is worse than yours. Oh, you think that's bad? Oh, you have a cramp in your foot. Oh, you think that's bad? You ought to try having a cramp in your leg, or you ought to try having a cramp in your neck or whatever. And then it's like all about them and their pain or whatever. So, then it's like, oh, sorry, I brought it up. I wasn't actually trying to like do anything. I was just trying to tell you something. But okay, yes, you are the much bigger one who has all the worst pain or trauma or whatever. Yes, of course. It's all about them and one-upping you, and they have like so much worse pain or worse things going on in their life. Yes, they have a harder time at work or whatever it is that's going on with them, but constantly one-upping you and devaluing you in conversation. So those are some of the ways that narcissists subtly devalue you in conversation. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting because, you just are constantly dealing with that. You're constantly walking on eggshells, and you feel like they suck the energy and the wind out of you all the time. And you don't feel like you walk away feeling uplifted, feeling vibrationally higher, feeling vibrationally like your energy is higher. And you want to be around people that make you feel better, like you feel like your light is higher, your energy is higher. And those are the kind of people that you want to be around, so you want to feel like you're breaking free, like you want to be around them, people who want to make you feel like you're setting your world on fire. Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life. Then they turned out to be your worst nightmare. And then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell. Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I will show you how. 10 power-packed phrases that can instantly unmask that covert narcissist. All right. So let's dive in, shall we? By the way, I've got a brand new book, Slay the Bully: How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win, which you should go straight to slaythebully.com and you should grab it right now, because if you do, you get early access to the entire manuscript, you get a masterclass, you get all sorts of really, really super cool things. So make sure you do that right now. All right. So number one is, I'm not having this discussion with you. I'm telling you how it is, because you know what? They bank on the fact that you're not going to snuff them out. They bank on the fact that you're not going to go direct with them. It stops them in their tracks. So if you say directly to them, I'm not having this discussion with you, I'm telling you how it is, then it establishes your assertiveness with them. And it lets the narcissist know that you won't be manipulated. And it sets this clear boundary with them. And you don't need to say it in an angry way. You don't need to say it in a way that has any tone. You don't even need to say it. You can just say it even sort of robotically. You can just make it clear that there's a new game in town, that this new game in town doesn't tolerate their attempts to control conversation. You can just say, I'm not having this discussion with you. I'm telling you how it is. Just like that. And you can just look at them like that. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is, I don't get what you're trying to say or do here. You just kind of play dumb. I don't understand what you're trying to do. I'm not sure. You act confused. And when you subtly sort of challenge the narcissist's attempts to confuse or gaslight you, it puts the focus back on their behavior to demand clarity. Instead of anger, you sort of are bewildered. I'm not sure. Can you provide clarity for me? I'm just trying to understand what it is you're trying to say. Can you give me some more clarity on that, please? When you approach it with some bewilderment or like confusion instead of anger, it sort of disarms them. So that's number two. Number three is, this isn't the way to talk to me or anyone else for that matter. So you are establishing that you are not going to be disrespected. And let me tell you, I always sort of give a formula for shifting the dynamic of power with narcissists. And I say that you need to think about it in terms of baby steps, because oftentimes you've been conditioned for a long time, whether it's a professional relationship or a personal relationship. A lot of times you don't feel like you can shift that dynamic of power all at once, because it feels overwhelming to do it all at once. So I say, step one, don't run. Step two, make a U-turn. Step three, break free. So step one is just creating those boundaries. When you first start creating those boundaries, that first boundary doesn't have to be a physical boundary. It doesn't have to be moving out of the house or getting out of a partnership. That first boundary can really just be, this isn't the way to talk to me or anyone else for that matter. You don't even have to add the or anyone else for that matter. You can just say, this isn't the way to talk to me. So by addressing their communication style and the fact that you find it disrespectful, you're reminding the covert narcissist that their behavior is not acceptable. And it also emphasizes, if you want to say, or anyone else for that matter, the importance of treating you with respect and others with respect. But if you don't even care about others at that moment, you can just say, don't treat me disrespectful. All right, so that's number three. Number four is, if you're going to talk about me to anyone else, it should be in a respectful manner. And, I have a friend who's also my business coach. She's been my business coach for a very long time. And she would always say, don't leave me less in other people's listening. So when people are hearing about me, don't leave me less. They're thinking less of me when you walk away. So, this phrase draws attention to the narcissist's tendency to, try to line up flying monkeys, gossip about you, have their army of people so that you feel isolated, where they're speaking ill of you. And it encourages them to consider their words and reminds them of that importance of speaking of respect. But really, more importantly, you're calling them out. You're demasking them. You're saying, I see you. I know what you're doing. I know what you're up to. You're not fooling me. I see what you're up to. It's almost like you're shining the light. It's like that when you pull the rock off the bugs and they all go scurrying. What are you doing?
right? So it's not just the fact that you're demanding this, it's also the fact that you're shining the light on it and you're like shaming them about it. The next one is number 5, which is your behavior and words have consequences, which can be felt by others. Here you're highlighting the impact of their actions, which again sheds light on their lack of empathy. And it reminds them that their behavior not only affects themselves, but those around them. They may not care about you, they may not even care about anyone else, but maybe they'll be worried about how it's going to show up for themselves. And in that moment, they may be so proud that they'll be like, oh, nothing's going to happen to me. But even if they say that in that moment, they may be worried. You can still say it because regardless of how they react in that moment, it still may worry them. Number 6 is it's not okay to only think of yourself and disregard everyone else's feelings. Again, you are standing up for yourself and you are letting them know that you see what they're doing. You see that they're only thinking of themselves. And especially for a covert narcissist, they want to be seen as the humanitarians. They want to be seen as the one who thinks of everyone else. And so if you are calling them out as someone who doesn't think of everyone else, they'll be like, oh, feigning this hurt. Like, I take care of everyone. Are you kidding me? They'll be extremely hurt by that, right? So that will kick them right in the gut. And it highlights the need for empathy and consideration towards others and exposing their lack thereof. And by the way, I have phrases for disarming narcissists that you can get for free at disarmthenarc.com, which I definitely highly recommend that you do. And if you need self-care, I have a whole video on self-care for coping with narcissists, and definitely check out that video as well. The next one is, if you want something from me, tell me so plainly instead of implying it and being passive aggressive. Again, they're going to be like, I'm being passive aggressive. What, me? Are you kidding? They don't want to be seen as anything other than good and wonderful, even though they are very, very passive aggressive. By actually calling out their passive aggressive tendencies and tactics, you force them to be more direct and transparent because they want to have sort of these clean hands all the time. They don't want to be seen as this manipulative person that they are. And it promotes their open and honest dialogue. And by the way, I have a whole video called Decoding the Top 7 Catchphrases of Narcissists, which is another great video for you to check out. So the next one is number 8, which is what you're doing right now isn't helping us and isn't helping the relationship. So, it just sort of like brings it all back so that you can remind everyone, where are we going with this? Don't we want to get to a place where we're actually getting somewhere with this whole thing, right? Aren't we trying to resolve a conflict here? By pointing out that their behavior is detrimental to the relationship, you highlight the negative impact of their actions. And it encourages the narcissist to reflect on their behavior and their consequences. Whether they actually do or not, probably not, but at least for that moment, they get like shamed and, they're open. You open that and you unmask them for that moment. The next one is, I know who I am and what I need in a relationship, and this is not it. The more you become authentic about who you are, how strong you are, and what you want in a relationship, the more difficult it's going to be for that covert narcissist to be existing in that, because that is a narcissist kryptonite. A strong, resilient, authentic human being is not a person who a narcissist can coexist with. A narcissist, by definition, needs a person who's going to be insecure needs a person who can be manipulated, needs a person who wants to cling to them. And that this statement, I know who I am and what I need in a relationship, asserts your self-worth, asserts your boundaries. It emphasizes you're not settling for a relationship tainted with narcissistic tendencies. It empowers you to protect yourself. So powerful. If you agree that this is so powerful, I want you to put that in the comments below right now. So powerful. The next one is this conversation is over until we can speak respectfully without manipulation or blame shifting. By setting a firm boundary, you establish that you will not engage in unhealthy conversations. This phrase demands that you demand mutual respect and honesty while exposing that covert narcs manipulation tactics. So good. Conversation's over until we can speak respectfully without manipulation and without blame shifting. And by the way, if you need additional support, please join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, because get the help and support that you need. And if you need therapy, betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung. Again, get the help and support that you need. We receive commissions. It doesn't cost you any extra. There you have it, folks. Those are the 10 power-packed phrases that will help you when dealing with and confronting a covert narcissist. How do you have a conversation with a narcissist? Obviously, you don't say the word no to a narcissist. How do you manipulate the conversation to be able to get a narcissist to do something that you want them to do?
So there's two things here for me. If I go back into where we mentioned at the very beginning about billionaires and a lot of the guys who sit at the very top of the big private equity firms are billionaires, right? You wouldn't know their names. They're not written down anywhere, but they are. And there is a view here I have that sometimes to get to the very top of anything, maybe you have to have some of the traits of narcissism. You see it in the world of sport, they call it the GOATs, the greatest of all time, right?
Yeah.
I've seen that in business.
Yeah.
But to your question specifically, I think there's a couple of things that I learned. And I'm a big believer that your environment shapes everything. We joked about Adelaide. If I'd stayed there, maybe I would have.
Serial killer or a priest.
But who knows, a priest or a shark diver or something.
Or a shark.
But I found two different patterns that work, and I'll contextualize this by saying you have to be very, very good at influence and persuasion. You have to be very, very good at reading situations, and you have to sort of have this almost like you build up a sense of this. It's almost like it's something that becomes a skill. And the reason I say that is there are some narcissists that I have absolutely said no to and been successful. Right? I've done that for sure. And there are others where there's no way that if I'd taken that approach, I would have been able to be successful. And the challenge is, how do you pick? How do you know? Right? And the thing that goes into my mind a little bit is, if you've ever done any martial arts or boxing or anything like that, there's a point in time where you have the ability to put the right punch in or not. Okay. And other times it's about playing defense versus offense. Okay. But the whole thing's a game. The whole thing's a game. And what I found to work sometimes, if someone was, maybe they'd stumbled a little bit, they'd shown a little bit of vulnerability, sometimes you can attack that. Okay. And if you understand that vulnerability, you can go quite deep into the wound if you're that way inclined. And people buckle. They may not buckle in the moment, but they leave the room, right? And things like that, because they don't know what to do. And that's where the bullying piece, I think, works quite interestingly. So, if you feel that you're getting in a situation where you have the angle to put the punch in, I've been successful at doing that, and that's actually got me through many a negotiation as well. Other times,
that's great advice. That is great advice.
It's interesting. I mean, it's such a, I look back in the world now, I've got literally the hairs on my arms are standing up as I'm telling this, because I can feel being in these places again. There are times where the opponent is, maybe too strong for you. Maybe at that point as well. Like sometimes I'm a big believer in energy right now. I understand it now. Back then I didn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes, there's a certain amount of energy that can be overwhelming if you walk into a situation with a huge amount of confidence. But when I've had people who, that they have to win and they have to feel like they're winning all the time. There's a classic martial art called Aikido. And the whole concept of Aikido is to use someone's power and strength and force against them. So if you ever Google it, you'll see this little guy, tiny little guy, old guy, battling these muscle-bound people and just flipping them all over the place, because the harder the force into them, the more he has the tools and the skills to be able to reverse that force back.
Mm.
And so what I found is with certain narcissists, you have to make it look like they win.
Yes.
Quite a lot, actually. It might be over weeks, months, right? Maybe longer. But what you're really doing is you're just bringing the force towards you until the point in time where you can reverse the force.
Oh,
And
so
how
hard.
that looks, right, is, and this is, I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it. You belay your own values. You get inside, you become a trusted ally, right? You become the person they start to trust until you can then turn that back against them.
Yeah. I call
See
it
what I mean?
ethically manipulating the manipulator.
Yeah, but you have to, and this is the thing, the reason I hate this, and I do hate this, is you have to sometimes compromise your own ethics for a period of time. And sometimes that time, as I said, could be a longer period of time, right? To be able to influence that person. And I think from doing this type of activity for a decade, as I've just explained it, I think that's what started to get me to that breakdown experience. So I was winning on the outside in, as I said, I was winning these things. But as I was starting to conflict with values, ethics, my own morality, whatever, that was starting to chip away at me.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it. I mean, but there are times when I'm talking to people and they'll say, oh, my soon to be ex wants to get back together, but I don't want to get back together. But I'll say, go along with the conversation for now until, because let them think that you're going to, I mean,
Yep.
there's times that is something you have to do. I mean, or even if it's a business partner or whatever, and they think that there's still a chance that whatever, you have to kind of lead them along for a while.
Yep.
There are times that you do have to kind of have that conversation for a while. I mean, I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator, because they are manipulators and they're opportunists, and you have to do what you have to do to survive.
It is that. It just depends, I think, on the actions. So I'll give you an example of that. I mentioned before that I'd go into businesses and fire people, effectively restructure.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a couple of decisions I made through that journey where I sacked my friends, my
That
good
must have
friends.
been hard, very hard.
Yeah. And not for the
They
reasons that they
weren't
weren't
friends
performing.
after that, I'm assuming.
Some of them are, because I've had the opportunity to explain the situation. I think in that world, you have to appreciate that you are playing a game. You are acting out to some extent a different caricature. So not always, but if you think about it, like if you've got a narcissist who says, I just want you to get rid of that person, and you go, well, why? Because they're doing a great job. Their numbers are off the charts. I just don't like them. So do it. So in that situation, what do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go back to the bully? No, I'm out. Right? I'm gone. Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the next conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you say yes to it, knowing it's the wrong thing to do for lots of reasons, and even the reason that's been given is a crap reason?
Americans spend up to 90% of their time indoors and take 20,000 breaths a day. Yet, according to the EPA, indoor air is actually more polluted than outdoor air. And in fact, 100 times more polluted than outdoor air. In fact, it's responsible for up to 7 million premature deaths annually. And I know for us, we have had issues with asthma. My daughter has struggled with asthma. And that's why we're so excited to find Air Doctor. Air Doctor has captured the attention of huge media outlets such as CNN, Money, ABC, and more. And it filters out 99.9% of dangerous contaminants and allergens such as pollen, pet dander, dust mites, and mold, and even bacteria and viruses. So your lungs don't have to do all of that extra work. So right now, Air Doctor also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't love it, you just send it back for a refund minus shipping. So head to airdoctorpro.com and use the promo code Your Best Life, and depending on the model, you receive up to 39% off and up to $300 off. Exclusive to podcast customers, you'll also receive a 3-year warranty on any unit, which is an additional $84 value. Lock in this special offer by going to AIRDOCTORPRO.com and use the promo code Your Best Life. Let's talk about those stealth ways that narcissists control conversations. Now, you know they're always trying to control you, right? They are manipulative by nature. But what are the ways that are really kind of stealthy, more secretive, more underhanded, that they're trying to control conversations? The ways that, aren't as obvious that they're doing this. And you're trying to be over there nice. You're trying to be the good person. The fact that you're in a relationship with a narcissist probably means that you are a good person. Whether it's a business relationship, workplace, friendship, romantic relationship, a lot of times you're trying to be polite. You're trying to be the one who takes the higher road. And you're thinking, I don't know, what should I do here? So I just want to bring this up so that it makes it a little bit easier for you to recognize when these things happen. And you can go, oh, you know what? I knew that this was something. I knew that this was going on. Let's talk about number one. Number one is they all of a sudden start going, oh, I can't believe that you would bring this up. And after all that I've done for you, I just tried to be a good mother. I just wanted to do something good for you. I really just wanted to you to have some support. All of a sudden it's the guilt trip. All right, so number one is it's stealthy because it doesn't seem like controlling the conversation, but this is where they become the victim most of the time, where people think, oh, they're trying to control the conversation, where they actually are doing something to you. Stealthier because they've become the victim in this. They've turned themselves into that victim. Oh my gosh, I was just trying to do something good for you. And I was just trying to support you in that. And so all of a sudden it's been turned around like that. And now you're taking care of them. Oh, I know that you were doing that. I know that that's what you meant to do. I wasn't trying to attack you. I wasn't meaning to bring you any harm. And now they've taken back control of the conversation. You see how stealth that was? That's what happened there. And now you haven't been able to talk about anything. Number two is they changed the topic. So you are talking about something that happened. I had an interesting thing happen today. I was just leaving this appointment and I ended up finding out this thing from, I was at the dentist today and the dentist was telling me all about blah, 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 whatever. Then all of a sudden the person will say, I thought that you didn't really have time to talk to anybody when you were at the dentist. And now you're talking about that instead of what you wanted to talk about, which was the conversation that you actually had with the dentist. They changed the topic. Now you're having to defend yourself about, I thought you didn't really have time to talk to anybody when you were at the dentist. I thought you were in and out. I thought that you said that you were in a rush over there. And now you're defending yourself about the whole situation at the dentist instead of actually talking about what it was that you wanted to talk about. And so they've completely just changed the topic and you never really get back to what it was that you wanted to talk about. So they've just hijacked the conversation completely. That's another way that they control the conversation. They start questioning another portion of what it is that you're talking about. And then you end up talking about that instead of what it was that you really wanted to talk about in the first place. All right. So that's number 2. Number 3 is they start raising their voice. They start to raise their voice and you start to go, why are you raising your voice? And they'll deny that they're raising their voice. And you'll say, you are. And why are you angry? You seem angry. No, I'm not. And then you get into a whole thing around that instead of what it is that you wanted to actually talk about. Again, a way to hijack conversations. It's very, very stealth, but they will do that. Okay, so that's another way to control conversations. It's very, very stealth, but it's again a way to control conversations. So that's number 4. Number 5 is they will interrupt you. They will say, you'll be trying to tell them what it is that you want to tell them, especially if it's something that is really, really important to you. Anything that's important to you, something that is around your work, something that's around your needs, something that's going on with somebody in your family. I mean, anything has anything to do with anything else other than them that they don't want to have to hear about, then they'll just start interrupting. They'll be like, can we talk about this later? I'm trying to hear you, but why are you talking about this at this moment? I can't hear you right now. That the radio is too loud. Just the way you're saying this, you're not making any sense. Who's that now? And they just interrupt everything that you're saying so that the flow of the kinds of things that you're saying, you end up losing flow. Oh, that's not the thing that you just said. I couldn't follow you. Oh, now you're attacking me. No, I didn't attack you. Oh, yes, you actually did. And then you end up fighting about that. And then, so then the whole thing ends up being completely derailed again, because the whole point of everything is derailing the conversation. They want to make sure that the conversation gets hacked, gets derailed, gets controlled. And it's also, again, very stealth, because as long as when you try to get them back on track and you say, hey, listen, we never get to the point of my conversation, they'll completely deny it. And they'll say, it's, your fault. You had a problem delivering it. I was here. I was trying to listen. You just never got to the point. You were the one who didn't tell me what it was. I was sitting right here. I was sitting here the whole time. You were the one who didn't finish the sentence. You were the one that kept interrupting me. What was your problem? You're the one that started raising your voice. The whole thing, that it'll all be your fault that you just couldn't get to the finish. You just couldn't figure out a way to deliver the content to them. So that's the next one. By the way, you totally deserve better. You totally deserve better. You totally deserve respect. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. I deserve respect. This is not how normal people have conversations. This is not a regular thing. And you know this because when you have conversations with regular people have a back and forth. They will talk to each other like regular people. I mean, they don't have this constant back and forth discussions like this. And another stealth way that a narcissist will try to control a conversation is that they will act like they don't understand what it is that you're talking about. They'll just feign misunderstanding. I don't understand what it is that you're talking about. I don't remember. I have no clue. That doesn't make any sense to me. We're going to have to talk about this later. You know, they'll just basically then just get up and leave. They'll just stop the conversation altogether. Basically, just end the conversation. You just terminate it because they don't understand it. And so they'll just abort the conversation completely because they'll just lose interest and start talking to somebody else. And so you'll just be done. So that's the next one. And then finally, the last one is just ignore you completely. And that's another way to control conversations. And you'll see this specifically in text messages or emails. And it's a really interesting thing because a lot of times the way you see this show up is they will send you a text that's extremely inflammatory. Why are you at this person's house? Or something to that effect. Or what's going on with this? And they'll screenshot something and send it to you like right in the middle of a meeting that they know is really, really important to you, or something is happening. And then you'll immediately write back going, you know that this is blah, 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 blah. And you know they're watching and you know they're reading it, or they even leave it on read or something like that, where it's like, you know that they've read it and they do not respond. They refuse to respond. To complete silent treatment, complete ghosting. Another way to control you, another way to control conversations, extremely stealth. And then, you know, what can you do? You can't do anything about it, especially if they know that you're stuck like at work or in a place where, you know, you can't get to them or you can't do anything about it for a period of time. It's the worst because they know that you are going crazy and that's why they do it. Okay, how to identify a narcissist from conversation. 8 ways, telltale signs that you're talking to somebody and you're like, yeah, that person's definitely a narcissist. And it's not what you might think. It's not saying something good about themselves, okay? Just because somebody says, I'm good at something, or yeah, I did a good job, that does not make that person a narcissist. That's okay. It's all right if somebody says something good about themselves. Actually, we should encourage people to say something good about themselves. A narcissist is a person who actually, you know, they're a self-centered person. It's never about anybody else other than themselves, okay? So this is a person who, number one, probably interrupts a lot. The other person is talking and literally mid-sentence, they're just so completely oblivious to the fact that another person is talking, they just start interrupting. And they don't even realize that the other person is talking. They don't go, oh, I'm sorry, you were saying something, go ahead, or whatever. They just start talking. And especially, you know, if it's like early on in the relationship or something like that, and just let the other person just go, especially if they're just mostly talking about themselves or, you know, something in their own lives or whatever. That's like definitely a telltale sign. Number one, they interrupt a lot. Number two is they never stop talking about themselves. They're just during an early phase of the relationship, you should be hearing questions about you. Tell me about you. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your job. The person should be interested in, or at least feign interest in you. This is a person who, like, if all they can't do is to talk about themselves, you might as well be a piece of furniture on the other side of the table. That's going to be a problem. Okay. They don't stop talking about themselves. The next one is they don't even stop to ask about you. I've noticed this even long into relationships with people sometimes. I remember having a client one time who was always, a fixture. Basically, he became a fixture in our office because he was just so wrapped up in his case, and he was, so worried about his kids all the time. And he was a likable guy in a lot of ways. And he became, really close to one of my paralegals. He became really close to one of my associates. My whole staff got to know him pretty well because, his case was like going on forever and everybody got to, be a part of it. But then one of my paralegals said, I just kind of noticed that he was never really interested in anybody else other than himself. Like he never really asked about what was going on in any of our lives. He never asked about me or my kids or anything like that. And she just got tired of it because she just felt like he didn't really care about anybody but himself. And so she just eventually when the case was over, the guy, I guess, thought that he was going to become friends with our paralegal or some of the other staff or whatever. And she was just like, no, I just feel like he's just too self-centered. It was like one thing when the case was going, because obviously everything was about him, but she just said, like, even when the case wrapped up, he still continued to not be interested in anybody but himself. So, if a person doesn't ever stop to ask about you, that could be a really big red flag. Or maybe number four, maybe they do stop to ask about you, but they don't stop to listen to the answer, or they're not interested in the answer. I know I've definitely been at cocktail parties or barbecues or social functions where somebody has asked me, how are things at work or whatever, how's everything? And then I start to answer them, and then they start looking at their phone, or they start looking around and, maybe there's somebody, they're looking for somebody more interesting to talk to, or they're kind of half listening to the answer, and you start going, well, maybe it's not all that interesting. Like, you don't really care about like answering the question because they're not really all that interested in hearing about it anyway. So whatever. Like if somebody asks about you or what's going on, and then they don't really listen to the answer, or they're not interested, or maybe they just kind of like interrupt the answer halfway through, then that's another part of it too. That might be a telltale sign that the person is a narcissist. Is this resonating with you guys so far? Give me a yes in the chat. How many of you guys have seen any of these so far? I'm sure that you've seen them so far. Number 5 is constant criticism of others. They're just judgy. These are super judgy people. They're just, this person is that, this person is that, my ex was this. They're just constantly wanting to like talk about other people. Everybody is a problem, constantly criticizing other people. That just is low vibrational energy. And that is just a no zone for me at this point in my life anymore. I don't feel like having it around. No, I want good people in my life, high vibration people, happy people. So if that's something that's you're happening, then I'm thinking that's not a good person. Another sign. Number 6 is gaslighting. They're talking and they're saying something, and they literally just said something to make you crazy. So I had the funniest conversation with somebody recently. He was a friend of mine who happens to be Chinese, and he was talking about how his grandma, literally, it's a funny gaslighting example, where he was saying that his grandma got in a car accident and she was kind of like gaslighting the person that she hit because it happened to be like a 16-year-old where it was like basically her fault. And she got out and she was like, it's okay, you know, you're an inexperienced driver. Like basically like trying to make it seem like it was his fault. Obviously, I don't think his grandma's a narcissist, but I don't know. But, you know, basically gaslighting the other person, like that's a way to identify a narcissist from conversation. They try to make the other person think they're crazy. Number 7 is lack of interest in others. Like they're just not interested in anyone else either. So, you know, I've been talking about not interested in you or the other person, like whoever it is that they're talking to, but they're just not really interested in anyone else either. They're just only interested in themselves. So that's number 7. And number 8, inability to accept any form of criticism at all. And even like the slightest thing, they sometimes they take things as slights or criticisms that aren't slights or criticism. When you're saying something about them, they take things as slights or criticisms that actually aren't. There's a discrepancy in the bill at the restaurant or something, and they take that as like personal affront or something. I mean, I remember being with a family member one time who was dating somebody who was, you know, a little bit crazy. And the person was like upset because they didn't get as many French fries as other people. And they take that as like a personal affront. Things that are like, they just see things that aren't there kinds of things, you know. So inability to take slights or criticisms, that can be a massive, huge problem. And you can identify narcissists that way as well. So let's talk about the differences between men and women and what actually motivates men and women.
Okay, well, as I talk about the differences between men and women, after I wrote Men Are From Mars, many women felt like they were from Mars, and many women said they felt their husbands were from Venus. Now, men didn't say, I feel like I'm from Venus, because that was like an insult to be on your female side. But the reality is many men are on their female side, many women are on their male side. And so to say that, we want to define male side, female side, because I've got both, you've got both, and we have a proper balance of masculine hormones and feminine hormones. Okay, so really what makes us biologically so different is the Y chromosome, which in a male for the first 3 weeks is a little girl. There's no difference at all. Then the Y chromosome releases 23 genes specific for males, which override many of his female genes. So literally, it gets repressed. It's gone. It's not, we can't access it. It's through women or through having children that a man can access deep feeling. We can't do it ourselves. Many men say they can. Okay. Usually they can when they're feeling negative. It turns out biologically, like my wife of 34 years, she died 5-6 years ago. For 2 years, I grieved. I had all this emotion come up because it was a huge loss. And when there's a big problem for a man, it's appropriate. His male side is weakened and his female side comes in strong, and then he has to process it in the same way a woman would. But biologically, we have different ways of coping with stress that are built into our biology. So what motivates men is solving problems. What motivates men is fixing things. What motivates men is achieving goals. What motivates men is success. Now, does that motivate women? Yes, but I can't tell you how many successful women are not happy, because in the process of being successful, achieving goals, getting things done, taking responsibility, sacrificing what you'd like to do for what you have to do is very masculine. And when I say it's very masculine, it makes masculine hormones. What are the masculine hormones? Testosterone. Now, why do we call testosterone a masculine hormone? Because for a man, in order to reproduce, in order to feel good, in order to be free of stress, his body has to make 10 to 20 times more testosterone than a woman. Simple. So what makes testosterone? Feeling success. What lowers testosterone? Failure, anticipation of failure, insecurity that I cannot do. I'm not good enough. So everything around a male psyche, whether he's aware of it or not, is driven towards Am I getting messages from the environment that I'm a success? And if he is, then his testosterone goes up, but only if he earned it. If everybody was to acknowledge me for how great I am and I didn't write that book, for example, it would just make me more depressed inside. It would be fake. So there's an aspect of life where you have to earn. If you earn, testosterone goes up. If a woman earns, her testosterone goes up. But testosterone doesn't necessarily lower her stress levels. What we know is that whenever a man is stressed, his testosterone levels have dropped below normal for that man, which on average is 10 to 20 times higher than normal for a woman. Now, for a woman, when she's stressed, her estrogen levels will be lower than normal at a certain time of the month, or her progesterone levels will be lower than normal at a certain time of the month. And I outline all of these shifts in hormones for women. It's a little complicated. So I wrote a whole book, I think 3 chapters or at least 100 pages was helping women understand the times of the month, which hormones need to be dominant in order for her to be stress-free. So, but it's simply put, one of the major characteristics there is estrogen. So whenever a woman is stressed during the period of from her period to ovulation, her estrogen levels will be low. If her estrogen levels continue to double over that period of time, and what would be normal estrogen is around 10 times more than a man, 10 times more estrogen. So it behooves us as men to figure out, to avoid difficult conversation, what can I do to raise her estrogen? And for a woman, what can she say or do to raise his testosterone? And so, and then now this is as she's moving towards ovulation. As she gets closer to the ovulation, for her to experience well-being, her estrogen levels have to double, literally double. A lot of things can double her estrogen. Relationship between men and women is one of the most powerful ways to raise that estrogen up. Going to a doctor is going to raise her estrogen. Whenever you're depending on someone for some meaningful level of support, your estrogen goes up. So like you could dance. I was talking to a woman the other day. She's, oh yes, I like to dance. It makes me feel really good. And that's just getting out on the dance floor and moving your body around. I said, that's good because you feel free, you feel safe. But go get a dance lesson with a man who can lead you, and you'll see your estrogen will go higher. And I remember observing this so many years ago when I was learning all these differences, but you see these retired women with their husbands, and they're in an altered state of ecstasy, dancing with their husbands to old-fashioned moves. And this is when you're going to produce the most estrogen, when you feel I can depend on this man to lead me in the dance in the direction I want to go. I feel safe and secure, and I can be mindless, so to speak. Well, that's an example. Going to a doctor, taking a class, learning something of value to you. Whenever you're depending on an outer source for your happiness, your estrogen goes up. Women who don't have that in their life, they might overeat, for example, because they're looking to their food for their happiness. Men who are too far on their female side, that would be a man whose testosterone is low. He goes over to his female side. That's what's strong. And these are men who have addiction. So you see addiction is huge inside of men for stimulants that will produce dopamine. So addiction is whenever you're depending on something outside yourself for too much. But women have a greater need to depend on relationships in order to raise their estrogen levels, which is why 90% of the people who buy books on relationship are women. 90% of the people who go to therapists, where you talk to a therapist or a coach, are women. Because when just the act of, and also people who go see their doctors, men will tend to wait till the emergency. So they know for sure, okay, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'll go to him. Women are very quick to go get support. Why is that? Statistically, we see that to be true, because when women are depending on something outside themselves, their estrogen levels will go higher. Now, after ovulation, she still needs to make a good 10 times more estrogen than a man. She doesn't need that 20%, that doubling. What she needs then is for her progesterone levels to go really high. And progesterone goes up, and it's always in conflict with testosterone. If her testosterone goes too high during that time, she will have PMS. Her progesterone levels will go low. So if a woman is overworking, overwhelmed, she will tend to have more at that 5 days before her period, when her progesterone levels need to go high, they don't go high. Her testosterone goes high. And that's from a feeling of, I have to do this all myself. So that's kind of an overview of, it's a big discussion. Nobody's ever discussed it in terms of what behaviors, what attitudes, what interactions and relationships dynamic is going to stimulate what hormones in your body at different times of the month.
What about in menopause then?
Okay, so we go into menopause. So what goes on after menopause, she gets to a certain point, her eggs run out, and her ovaries are no longer going to make the estrogen necessary to make a baby. She doesn't have to have such high estrogen levels to be happy. What she requires to be happy is to have the right balance between her estrogen and her testosterone. This testosterone gets produced when your motivation is, I have to do it myself. When I talk about success, is I'm solving the problem. I'm not sitting back having somebody else solve the problem. This is what you see a lot of men as they retire. They're no longer solving problems. There's a drop in their testosterone. They become passive. They become grumpy. They become irritable. And they have a heart attack within 3 years, according to life insurance records. This is the number one reason why men die early when they do, is they're not engaged in behaviors that will stimulate testosterone. And it's a confusing thing for a man, because if I work hard, today I work hard, then I can come home and sit on the couch, I can watch the news, I can read a book, I can play a hobby, I can spend time with my kids, my wife. All those things will rebuild the testosterone, particularly my hobby. I call it cave time. When I watch the news or I meditate, those are my major ways. For some men, they will go to the gym, they'll exercise. These are things that help men to forget the problems of their day. You see, if I can temporarily forget the problems of my day, then I don't have to be solving problems. When men see problems, they have to solve problems. If you can't solve problems, you're a failure. So one of the mechanisms that's very unique in men is if applied, and we have to be taught how to do this, if applied, we have the ability to forget our problems temporarily. So men will often say to women, honey, just forget it. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, as if she has the ability to just forget it and let it go, and it's not a big deal. The difference here is that men have a way of temporarily forgetting problems, sort of mulling it over, forgetting about it for a little while, because if you can't solve a problem, your testosterone goes down. So if I can't solve it, nothing I can do, then forget it, let it go. Tomorrow I'll deal with it. So I need something to distract my attention from the problem. And that's what often I call the cave time. For women, it's a little different. If a woman has been in her testosterone world all day, she still needs to rebuild her testosterone, because women make a lot of testosterone. It's just men make 20 times more. Okay. So for her to rebuild her testosterone, she needs to take time away from solving problems if she can. It's much harder for women to do that. What we've learned in therapy, which is a technology where you can talk about what you feel, what you think, what you wish, what you like, what you don't like. It's sorting it out loud. Another version of that, which is very popular today, is journaling, for women to journal. Now, what I've done in my books is made journaling very efficient. So it's much more effective to journal what's going on that you don't like and the emotion that goes with it. Because when you can say, oh, my husband's ignoring me and I have so much to do and whatever. Okay, that's a little estrogen you get by complaining. But if you look at the emotion of that, I'm angry that my husband's ignoring me. I feel excluded. I feel left out. And that makes me feel sad. And I'm afraid that that he's going to leave me if I don't do all these things that are causing me to be overwhelmed. If you feel the emotion, that's when your estrogen goes the highest. Now, why do we want the estrogen to go up? Because when women are stressed, generally the modern woman today, she's stressed, you can measure the hormone levels. Depending upon the time of the month, either her estrogen is too low, or after ovulation, her estrogen is too high compared to progesterone. So you have to have the right balance. So this is where this insight comes so good. If you need more progesterone at a certain time of the month, a woman can be more mindful to do things she likes doing. Okay, that's where you have to come. What do I enjoy doing? What I like doing? And there's even some mental things you can do. For example, if you're overwhelmed with too much to do, whenever you're feeling that, which so many women today feel. Now, I watched this happen in the 80s. I watched how women's vocabulary changed in counseling. Suddenly women were feeling overwhelmed. No time for me. So many things I have to do. rarely in those, never did I hear a man say he was overwhelmed. Okay. Now today, as men have been feminized, even men are starting to feel overwhelmed. As this female side comes into play, they lose their ability to disconnect and go, I'll deal with it tomorrow. I don't have to look at it now, which is a beneficial thing for men, not a good thing for women, because when a woman behaves like a man, well, forget it. There's nothing I can do about it. I'll just do what I can do. Those are good male strategies, but it's not going to pump up her estrogen. So or her progesterone. At those times, and you've dealt with this in your books, when women are experiencing stress or men are experiencing stress, and I just explained that we experience the hormone of cortisol when our hormones, her testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are out of balance. When cortisol levels is elevated, what happens, as you write in your books, there's a bias towards looking at negativity. As soon as danger arises in your body, you can't control. You see, you have no control over this. Your mind will look at the negative. Any woman, when she's stressed, go stand in the mirror and see how critical you are of your body. I mean, other days you don't notice it, other days you do. Is that the brain becomes hypercritical, looking for what's wrong rather than looking at what's okay, what's good. And we're actually designed, there's nothing wrong with looking at the negative. We're designed with the prefrontal cortex. The left prefrontal cortex is to see the good. The right is to see the problem. So we can look at a problem and then we find the solution, which is the good. We have something called evolution and progress. We're designed to do that. But when we're in a stress state, we tend to focus on the negative, and we don't have the ability to feel the love in our hearts, the values that we carry around, the generosity of spirit, the empathy, the understanding, which is what we want to access, and negative arguments or avoiding painful, difficult arguments. So this was all a foundation for us to dig into a meaningful way to approach our conversation skills.
Yeah, and it can actually even shrink the hippocampus when you're in so much stress, can it? I mean, I've actually seen research on that. When you're in so much stress that PTSD like can actually cause your brain to have like brain fog because you've had so much stress.
Well, since we talk about the hippocampus, let's look at it from a gender point of view. I look at everything through the gender, okay?
Yeah.
And women's brains, typically their hippocampus is twice as big as a man's. Okay, now so what you often have in hippocampus that is part of our emotional memory, which is why when women are under stress, they actually have 8 times more blood flow going to the hippocampus to remind them of everything which has ever gone wrong, is going wrong, or could go wrong. And men under moderate stress, this is under moderate stress, women's brain speeds up thinking of all this. Under moderate stress, they measured blood flow literally stops to the hippocampus for men. Okay, so think about this. The way I would relate to that as a man, I'm driving my car, and if I'm going the speed limit, everything is cool, calm, and collected. Now I'm going to go 20 miles over, which some men like to do. Okay, so now you're not going 55, which is a ridiculous speed limit imposed a long time ago in California to save fuel. Okay, it's just control manipulation. When I grew up in Texas, it was 70 miles an hour. My mother would be driving us on vacation 90 miles an hour. It was amazing. The point I'm saying is that when you're going over the speed limit more than 10 miles, you're in danger. It's a little danger. So you produce adrenaline. That's called low stress as adrenaline. Cortisol is high stress. Adrenaline is you still feel you're in control. But when you go out of control, that's cortisol. So at adrenaline, what happens for women, as adrenaline increases, negative emotions, frustrations, disappointments, concerns, worries, doubts, guilt feelings, all of those kind of feelings amplify for her. For a man, those diminish. So, you see these guys are mountain climbers. Why would they do that? They're getting their adrenaline rush. You have no problems when adrenaline is running for a man, particularly for a man. And for some women, they've adjusted to that, being way on their male side, run by testosterone. But they will have problems with fertility. What we're seeing now is women are driven on their male side. They're not producing enough estrogen. Their fertility goes down, which is 30% now. And so this is a big problem. But when a woman's fertility goes down, it's also an indication her capacity to feel the love in her heart is diminishing. Because when your estrogen levels are in the right place, you can see the bad, but you can also see the good. That's the key to this thing. And men don't understand that about women. So here's a conversation skill. When you're having a conversation and a woman's upset about something, don't speak if you're a man. Ask questions. Continue to ask questions. Get her to talk more. Don't react to what she's saying other than to try to seek to understand where she's coming from with a knowledge that where she's coming from is needing to sort out what's bothering her, various conflicts inside. I want to go, but I don't want to go. I'm happy about this, but I'm not happy about this. And let it just unfold with curiosity, which will elicit more empathy in your heart if you're not trying to solve the problem. But in a sense, you are solving the problem. I have an unhappy person here. What can I do to help them be happy? That's the goal. So men make the mistake of trying to help her in a way that he would help himself. Like, for example, the phrase, "It's no big deal." Men say this all the time. It's the worst thing you can say to a woman when she's bothered by something. Whereas a man does that because how do I minimize stress? It's not a big deal. I can handle it one thing at a time. It's not a big deal. I can't do anything about it now. It's not a big deal. I'll handle it tomorrow. It's not a big deal because nothing can be done. If there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can do, but just accept. These are strategies that used to be taught to males by their fathers who would react to challenging, difficult situations without becoming negatively emotional. Part of masculinity is learning how to tame the negative emotions within yourself by analysis. If we look at the father of modern psychology, it was Freud, who basically never looked eye to eye with a client, never asked them how you feel. Freud said, "What do you think?" And he didn't do it eye to eye. You're lying down as a man, you lie on a couch, not looking at your therapist in a dark room, and you're just analyzing. So this is what men have to come back to learning how to do, is analyze why they're upset and what they can do about it, and challenge anything that's bothering you. Because ultimately, the way I look at life, anything that upsets me is not a big deal. It's not
Yeah.
a big deal. I
I
can
mean,
solve anything.
look at the bright side. Like that's kind of a toxic positivity thing nowadays, where it's like, look at the bright side, because then you don't feel hurt.
Well, that's a toxic thing, and it's putting whipped cream on top of cow dung. Okay,
Yeah, but I
but that's
think
not what I'm talking about. I'm
well, but
talking
I
about
think that can be kind of something that a man might say sometimes too, though.
like what?
Like, just look at the bright side, because they just
Well,
want to kind of like sweep things off and move to the next thing.
again, we can look at that as a wrong thing to ever say to a woman.
Right. That's what I mean.
It's the
Yeah.
dark side. But that's what he legitimately does. He analyzes, okay, what is the problem and what is the solution? Why dwell on it? And that's a limitation of masculinity.
Yeah.
If all you have is that process by yourself, you never have emotion. You never have feeling. This is why men and women are so good. It's like when I connect with my wife, I get in touch with feeling as long as I'm not judging her, being critical of her in any way, but understanding she's a lifeline for me to connect with the love in my heart, the feelings in my heart. And when she's sharing things about her feelings, whatever they are, it helps me as a man to connect with my feelings. Because when you connect with your feelings, it is estrogen going up. Now,
So I want to get to, you've got some really great stuff that I want to get into, where you talk about how to actually motivate a man and how to motivate a woman, because I think this is how the key to kind of getting into some difficult conversations, and get through some difficult conversations. If somebody's dealing with, let's say, somebody that they think is maybe a toxic person or a difficult person, and I call it fluff or favor, vomit later, or some of these things here.
love that phrase. Love.
Thank you.
Or vomit later. Great,
Yeah.
great.
Well, I mean, I always say, if you have to go shower or vomit later, then that's what you have to do. But, like,
Let me give my story on that. Okay. When you
please.
told me that, I had a cute little story. I remember back, it was first year I was married to Bonnie. And she'd asked me several times, we had a little child, and she said, we need to get milk. Okay. So, and would you bring home some milk? And with all good intention, I'm driving home and I'm going to get milk for my wife, completely forget it. one reason, my hippocampus is smaller. I don't under stress. I don't think about all those things. For women under stress, they do. And that would just be a biological explanation of how could I forget. But I forgot. And then I forgot. And I forgot. The third time I forgot, she didn't say anything, which was quite nice of her, because when she asked me the third time, I was going from the TV to the bedroom. I was really working hard, lots of exhaustion, trying to support her and the family and the house and all that. And she was being a very loving wife, and she just sort of followed me up. And I wonder, what's she doing? And she said, on the way, while I was moving, she says, honey, would you go to the store and pick up some milk? It's just a like 10-minute drive away. And I went, oh, yeah. In my mind, I'm already thinking, oh, she's asked me already 2 times. Now she's asking the third time. What is this? She's being so nice about it. And I said, look, honey, I promise tomorrow I will do it. Now, any woman at that point would say, well, I asked you so many times, okay, and it's not going to believe me. But I said, I'll get it tomorrow. She says, that would be really nice. And then she followed me into the bedroom, and I sat down on the bed, taking off my shoes. She said, it would be even more wonderful if you went right now. I thought I'd gotten out of it, right? So she said, it'd be more wonderful. I said, honey, I promise you tomorrow. I'm just so tired. She paused and she said, I know you're tired. You're putting in so many hours, and I really appreciate it. And I thought, okay, now I can go to bed. Then she says, it would just be so nice if you went to the store tonight and got it. Okay, so she did this a couple of times. Finally, I wasn't yet a trained man. Now, if my wife said, go to the store, I'd do it just like that, because I know that's the best foreplay for sex. And that is my reality. I jump quickly. Anything under 10 minutes, I'll do in an instant, because that will surge a woman's estrogen, allow her to feel the love in her heart, be a happier wife. Every man wants that. They just don't know how easy it can be. He doesn't know that if I jump and do that little task, it has a big effect on her estrogen levels, which will lower her stress, remind her why she's married to me and what a great guy I am, because she forgets as well. All right. So I'm basically, most men don't have the self-awareness that I have. Okay. I was a monk for 9 years. I reflect on everything. I know everything I think, why I think it, and so forth. So, but at that point, I said, okay, I'll get it. That's called male grumbles. Then when I got in my car, I skid out the back, and I go, why am I skidding out the back? Why am I making a big deal out of this? And within a couple of minutes, as I'm driving the car, remember, one of the big testosterone things is for men to drive. I've got a goal. I've set my goal. Within 10 minutes, all those grumpy feelings were gone. That's what women don't understand about men. Yes, I had this grumpy stuff. I got to the 7-Eleven. I opened the door. I said to the man at the counter, where's the milk? I'm getting some milk for my wife in the middle of the night. He like had no reaction. So I went up to a woman. I said, where's the milk? You're getting milk for your wife in the middle of the night? Amazing. See, this is women appreciating little things men do. Men just don't understand doing little things, little inconvenient things, without grumbling, without whining, without putting it off to the next day, has a huge impact on estrogen. So I got the milk, and I still remember, I felt like I'd like, oh, look, I'm the hero. I got milk in the middle of the night. Not thinking, well, she's asked me 2 or 3 times. Okay. And now this is the throw up part. So I come home with the milk, and she gives me a big hug. She says, thank you so much, honey. And I'm sure inside of her, it's like, he made such a big deal out of just going to get the milk. That's the throw up part. I can tell my friends about it, but I gave him what he needed, because next time he'll be more quick to go get whatever I want him to do. Men are all based on reward. Men are not trained that little things get big rewards, because in the work world, little things don't get big rewards. You get last place. You have to be bigger and better or more effective or have your skill, and you get ahead. But with women, it's love. It's showing little aspects of love. For example, I can give my wife 24 roses, and there'll be a surge of estrogen. I can give her 1 rose and almost the same surge of estrogen. So it's like for men to recalibrate when you're dealing with the women, little things make a big difference. And when it comes to conversation, little things make a big difference as well, which is why asking more questions, it doesn't sound like it's such a big deal. It's a huge deal to give her a chance to talk about what's bothering her without reacting. And what are some of the common reactions men have? What's the point? Don't say, what's the point? Ask, tell me more. Another one is, well, that's just forget it. Or look on the bright side. Like you said, all he's doing is using his mechanisms in order to help her feel good. Because look on the bright side, that's a good strategy for a man. If I'm like, recently, my business partner who owes me $5 million died. Okay, so say goodbye to $5 million. I'm in my men's group. One of my men said, brutal. I went, yep, it's brutal, but I'm starting another business. So this is part of masculinity. It's not to get caught up in your negative emotions, and to realize when you do have negative emotions, don't amplify them by talking. It's the opposite of what psychology teaches. This is what men used to do, to train yourself as men to suck it up and don't talk unless you have some positive feeling in your heart, or at least you're neutral. And when a woman is,
Yeah, it's so funny. As you were saying this thing about the milk, I was thinking about this comedian. I got to find her name, but she was like, "Oh, I've learned to train my husband to do things that I want." And she's like, I say things like, "Oh, you're so hot unloading that dishwasher." Oh, like, like,
well,
like, because like that's like words of affirmation for him. Like, oh, and that gets him to do things, right?
there's no question about it, is how you can motivate a man by giving him the opportunity to be successful. The
Yeah,
key there is stop giving so much to men and then resentment later. Look what I
yeah,
do for him. Look what I do for him. It's doing for him is not going to increase his motivation. Giving him the opportunity to do for you with a nice response, a nice response.
yeah.
And like my wife, the next morning when I got up, she was down in the kitchen. Little kids are there. She says, she was just pouring the milk and the kids were going, yay, milk. And she says, yes, in the middle of the night, your dad got up and got that milk. She gave me even more credit. The more
Yeah.
credit you can give to men, the more they get bond with you, the more they're willing to do things for you. Because look, if I didn't get paid, I wouldn't be doing what I do. I'll give you an example. A man can do what he doesn't like to do. In an instant, he can start liking to do it. Back in the 10 years ago, 5 years ago or so, China was rising up. People were getting rich overnight. They used to pay me $100,000 in first class travel to give a talk. Okay. So somebody said, do you want to go to China and give a talk? No, I'm not interested in that long flight. I'm very happy in my life and my country. And then you say, well, they'll give you $100,000. Oh, I'd be very happy to fly to China. No problem with that. Okay. I suddenly shift. It's based upon what is the reward ratio to me. And ultimately, the biggest reward for any man in his marriage is his wife's happiness. He just doesn't know the little things make such a big difference. He doesn't know how he sabotages his success in a relationship.